How's it going, everybody? It's me, Hokyoku, and today we're going to be checking out one of the new Genshin characters coming to the game probably pretty soon in 5.0. Now, I'm not really going to go into much details about their kit, however, I am going to basically look through it myself and then talk about some of the things that I think are very good about this character and some of the things that make them shine, I guess you could say, and then I will also give you my early build guide, basically outlining for the artifacts, weapons, and that kind of things. So Spinach is basically dragon themed, as are probably most of the NATLAN characters, and for that means that he's gonna have like some dragon type theming in terms of his basically abilities and that kind of stuff. His elemental skill does seem to have quite a bit of maneuverability. You are able to do stuff like grapple hook type things with it. And his ult, it does have a good bit of, what do you call it, pixelation to it, so that's pretty fun. If you want to look up gameplay, you can. That is what I would recommend to do, probably over on Honey Hunter Impact, because that's what I'm looking at the moment. So basically, yeah, his E skill, it seems to have, let's see, low or high damage scaling. Let's see, it definitely has high damage scaling on its damage for its main instance, which seems to be, let's see, over 1,000 actually. So that's pretty good damage, I would say, for an E skill. Kind of similar to Ito's E skill, to where it is pretty high damage scaling, but I think that's also when he is actually going to hit the enemies when he comes back down from being in the air. So that seems pretty cool. And then we've got also another instance of damage, but this one is split into two. And that one also at max level and crowned, it does get over 100, so that is still pretty substantial for that kind of damage, which I think is the initial hit, but then it's like you have a way to position the larger hit in some place, and that does actually do injury damage, which seems pretty good. And then for his ult, Spinach, level 10, seems to be pretty high damage. It has like multiple different things. It does like a temporary basis type thing, so like it does it at certain intervals and also deals AoE damage, which is pretty good. And you can also extend its duration, which is pretty nice as well. But in terms of damage and stuff, it does have a low-ish multipliers, but you also are getting lots of incidences of this. Like at level 10, you are above 200 on both of those multipliers, which is pretty good, I would say. And for the duration, it is a solid like mid 10-20 second in between that kind of section area, you know. And then we also have a normal cooldown for the energy cost that this does have, and it does have the second highest energy cost, not second highest energy cost, rather third highest energy cost, because I think Raiden at 90 has the highest. So he's not at 90 energy, which is pretty good, I would say. Let's see, as for his passives, they have stuff to do with him being in the air, and while he is in the middle of being in the air, you can also do some little weird stuff to do multiple swings, is what it seems like. There also is some weird interaction, is what it looks like here, with some certain areas in NATLAN itself, which seems like it'll be a pretty cool area to test and see what that actually does. Let's see, another one of his passives, opponents, when they get hit, let's see, when, I think it has to do with like burning and burgeon effects, basically, with reactions like that, and you get a certain amount of points back for some of his abilities in his kit, which is pretty good. And then you can gain those points back every normal kind of reaction interval, so definitely seems like you can gain these back pretty fast and pretty regularly. It just comes down to cooldown on his abilities, I would say, or like on reaction cooldown. And then also he has another passive ability that whenever I think it triggers like some of his burst abilities, if I'm not mistaken, you can get different stacks of stuff, which will basically increase damage of the E skill by a good bit, so it is quite a good bit, so pretty cool, pretty cool. As for his constellations, it looks like the first constellation is very much increasing, like, his damage, so like his crit damage is being increased is what it seems like. And you also get some interesting things when it relates to how fast he can move. Let's see, number 2, constellation number 2, definitely seems like it's giving him some more survivability, and also giving some damage increase as well here. Let's see, the constellation 4, basically energy focused. That's usually how it is with these hyper carries. The 4th constellation is usually a very energy focused, basically just restores some energy. And constellation 6, you can actually bounce some of the damage between stuff, and it does a good bit of his damage as Dendro damage, so that is pretty cool. Let's see, now we can get into what weapon choices I think will be good for him, because he is a Claymore, a Dendro Claymore at that. Now, I haven't really been looking at weapons and been in the loop of Genshin Impact too much recently, but I do know that since he's Dendro, you are going to be using a lot of reactions with, like, Burgeon, that kind of stuff, Quicken stuff potentially. So let's see, stuff that could work as fun free-to-play options. So Black Glove Slasher is going to be a pretty decent option just because you have a good amount of base attack with it. Like, it goes up to the 510. 510 is what it normally is, but then it's like, yeah, you've got 50 crit damage, which he does benefit from crit damage quite a bit since he is a basically attack and crit damage focused kind of character, I would say. However, you are going to want to balance this out with crit rate, like I always say. Or I always used to say that, but yeah, so the passive on this, by defeating enemies, then you get the extra attack. It's very good at R1 and also very good at R5. You are probably going to be mainly defeating enemies, I would say, with him, just because he does actually have lots of damage instances, so likely you're going to be hitting and defeating enemies with his attacks like that. The Katsuguri Nagamasa might be an okay weapon to use, however, like, his big damage number, I think, or like some of his damage with his like normal attacks and that kind of stuff aren't going to benefit from the passive on this. But if we do consider that his E skill is going to be doing 1,000 damage percent right there, this also is going to increase that by up to 12% if you have R5 of this, which I would highly recommend going after, because R5 of this is a pretty solid weapon. So that increases your elemental skill damage by 12%, which is going to be basically like an extra good bit of damage on his elemental skill instance. And after you hit the opponent, you're going to lose that 3 energy, but you regenerate 5 every 2 seconds, which is basically perfect for characters like this that you're going to be using your E skill and then basically attacking with a good bit of time, or basically casting your burst and then using E skill, that kind of stuff, maneuvering around, stuff like that basically. But this is going to help you out a lot with your energy recovery, which I think is a good benefit, and it also comes with ER percent as its stuff right there, so very good. Now the bell is his best in slot weapon of all time. You have to use this weapon. It's actually insane how good it is. The amount of HP you gain from this, it just gets converted straight into damage. It just increases his damage by 41% across the board. All of his damage percentages go up by 41%. Plus the passive on this, you get a shield, which the shield makes it to where he doesn't die even more. And then you also get extra damage bonus with that shield, which is really crazy because since it's a shield, you can use shield boosting abilities and that kind of stuff to make it to where the shield never disappears and you never take damage and never disappears. And then you always have that extra damage on there. Not to mention, its base attack, it's actually the highest in the game. I couldn't believe it was so high when I first saw this weapon. So the bell, 100% is best in slot. The Macaria Aquamarine, this one actually probably is pretty decent as well, because look, it does have a pretty middle of the line attack, but you get ELM, which is Elemental Mastery, which is going to be pretty good for him as a hyper carry if you are running him for like quicken teams, that kind of stuff, or as a Burgeon triggerer. Well, I mean, he can't trigger Burgeon, but he can trigger Burning, so also with Emily, that will be a good combo, I would say, like using him as your hyper carry with her as support, I would say. The passive on this, following effect will trigger every 10 seconds. The equipping character will gain 48% of their elemental mastery as bonus attack, so that's a flat rate of attack. So for example, if you had, let's say, an average of like 500, you would be gaining like 250 attack from that, which is pretty okay for R5 of this. Even at R1, that's still going to be like, let's see, that's still going to be around like 100 something attack. So not too much, not too bad. Neil party members gain 30% from this. I think this is actually probably a little bit more beneficial on like a support claymore. However, like you can still utilize it a decent bit if you are running him at potentially high refinements and also high elemental mastery. I think it could be very good. Now getting into the 5-star weapons, Skyward Pride seems to be a pretty decent option for him, just considering that you get bonus ER, which is very good for keeping his burst up. The high base attack will factor in very nicely with his normally high base attack anyway, so that's going to be pretty beneficial. But also its passive increases all damage by 8%. Pretty okay buff right here that's going to be benefiting your whole entire kit. And after you use the elemental burst, you get vacuum blades that do 80% of your attack as damage instances, which is pretty okay considering that you are going to be doing like a few normal attacks with him, is what it seems like anyway. I don't necessarily remember if his burst actually is giving him infusion or not. I didn't quite check that. However, if it does, this is going to be okay. And if it doesn't, you can still use these for like a few vacuum blades when he is on field, when you are swinging around, that kind of stuff. You can use some of these normal charge attacks, that kind of stuff, to just, I guess, get some extra damage instances. The Wolf's Gravestone, I think, probably will be pretty good on him already also, just because, yeah, it just gives you lots of attack percent, so you can factor into stuff like crit damage, that kind of stuff a bit more. Also, like, it does give you, yeah, it just gives you tons of attack with its passive, and also boosts, yeah, it boosts like all party members attack by 40% with R1, so very, very good. Wolf's Gravestone has always been just a good buffing kind of claymore, and I think it will be just relatively solid with him for the most part. Song of Broken Pines could actually be a pretty okay option on him as well, especially if he doesn't have infusion on his normal attacks. You can still do some like physical damage with him, and it'll be boosted by the 20% physical damage on here. However, I would probably still build him Dendro damage, just because that seems to be what he's mainly focused around. And then it does have a very high base attack of 740, which I think can be beneficial on there. Plus the passive basically increases your attack, and then you get these different other sigils, which is basically going to increase your normal attack speed and also your attack. So that is going to be beneficial to you as well. The Unforged I could only see being actually beneficial to him if you are running him with characters like Zhongli and going for infusion on his normal attacks. You can do that with like characters like Bennett. Chongyun could be an interesting option as well. Potentially going for like a Cryo and Dendro application team, to where you basically get permafreeze on enemies, and then you can do like burning reactions, that kind of stuff, or like melt reactions, stuff like that, I think is how that works, if I'm not mistaken. You basically keep cryo applied instead of removing it with pyro. So that could be an interesting build to keep in mind as well. But you're also going to be protected by the shield, which is nice whenever you are using like Zhongli with this. And yeah, if you're using him as your on-fielder, it can make for some interesting team comps, but that's basically all I have to say about that. The Stone Thresher is going to be an interesting option for him also, just because it comes with so much crit damage. It's just pretty good overall, I would say. Defense, I don't necessarily think he has great utilization of defense. Like, he doesn't have anything in his kit really that basically boosts your defense completely. It just boosts your damage negation type stuff. So this isn't going to benefit you as much. However, like, if you do have just a bunch of defense on him, this is going to benefit you somewhat. And then your normal charge attack damage is increased by 40% of your defense, which is just a flat bonus to like normal charge attack stuff anyway, so it can be utilized. The Bacon of the Red Sea could be a option to consider as well. Not necessarily for anything other than that. It comes with crit rate as its substat. If you're struggling with getting crit rate, this is definitely a weapon that can be beneficial, because he does get a good bit of crit damage with most of his kit. But also, after you use an elemental skill and it hits an enemies, you get an extra 20 attack for 8 seconds, so pretty good right there. And then you also get 20% after taking damage. So if you're not running shielders with this character, I think that could be a pretty good thing to go with, you know. And then you also get some extra HP, which isn't necessarily utilized in this kit, but it will just give you a bit more survivability on field if you are tackling the Abyss and other difficult content. The Verdict is the signature weapon for, I think, what's her name? The Geo girl. I forget what her name is. But this one, let's see what it does. It has a high base attack, which is nice. You get crit rate, which is very good as well, considering that will boost out its damage. It's attacked by 20%, so already I think this weapon is probably going to be better than the Beacon of the Red Sea in general, just because of the high base attack and also increases your attack. And so when you get elemental shards from crystallized reactions, you gain 1 seal, which increases your elemental skill damage by 18%. And let's see, you can have up to 2 seals at once. And then all instances disappear after your elemental skill deals an instance of damage. So I think that will basically boost out your first instance of damage on its E whenever whatever he's throwing out hits an enemy. I don't think that's the big over 1,000% hit. I think you'll have a tough time getting that to land with that, but if it does land, this Claymore could actually be pretty cool with that. But yeah, I think this is overall better than the Beacon of the Red Sea. And let's see, now as for his signature weapon, it seems like you get some stacks when you hit enemies with your elemental skill, and it can be triggered very rapidly, so you can get those pretty good. And after Burgeon or Burning is happening, you also gain 3 stacks, which seems pretty beneficial as well. That can only be triggered a little bit slower, so yeah, you have to keep that in mind. Let's see, and also those stacks are actually going to benefit your elemental skill and elemental burst by a good bit for a few seconds, and you can actually get up to over 5 stacks, which seems like it'll be pretty good. And the best part is that those aren't all stacking up and then it just goes back down, and they're all individual, which is a pretty good thing. This weapon does have a very high base attack, basically think the Song of Broken Pines level base attack, and the substat for this does seem to be benefiting you because it'll help you get a bit more crit rate, so that's pretty good, which will balance out your build there. So overall, yeah, it's his best in slot. I would go for this weapon if you have the pulls to spare, that kind of stuff. Very cool weapon. Now getting into artifact set choice, starting off with Noblesse Oblige. Noblesse Oblige might be pretty okay for boosting out his elemental burst damage. You get 20% on that as well. However, I would only use the 2-piece on this for the most part, because that is going to benefit you that way. Using your elemental burst also gives you 20% attack, but I wouldn't use the 4-piece on this. I'd probably stick to this as the 2-piece bonus. And then I think there's also like another set that does similar things that's just better than this one. Emblem of Severed Fate set I think will be pretty good on him as well, especially if you are using stuff like energy recharge weapons, that kind of thing. This is going to boost your energy recharge by 20 points, and then yeah, of course you get the extra damage based on your elemental energy recharge. So you can get a good bit of damage bonus for his elemental burst damage from this, which I think is going to be pretty beneficial, I would say. The Gilded Dream set could be a viable option as well, just if you're running him as a elemental mastery type build, or running him with that one sword that benefits off of having higher elemental mastery. This increases that by 80 points, and then also whenever you trigger elemental reactions, you get some extra attack, or if you have like a bunch of extra Dendra characters with him, or you get some elemental mastery if you have other characters that are not from him. The Golden Troop set could be a pretty viable option to run with him if you are planning on using him for, let's see, elemental damage on his elemental skill, which I think actually is probably one of his more fun ways to play if you want to go for like big instances of damage from his basically plunge attack elemental skill thingy there. So you get 20 points of increased elemental skill damage. It increases the elemental skill damage by 25%, and when you're not on the field, elemental skill damage is increased by 25% as well. So you basically get, let's see, 45% elemental skill damage from this by using the 4-piece, because he's not going to be, he is going to be on the field, so you can't get that off-field damage increase there. But yeah, I would still say it's an okay and viable option, especially if you just have better substats with this. It could be a viable option. The Unfinished Reverie set, this set is very much catered to burning reactions, so I would say this is going to be a viable set on him if you are using him in burning team comps. So you do get 18% attack, which is beneficial to him, and also after leaving combat for 3 seconds, damage shell increases by 50%. In combat, if no burning opponents are nearby for more than 6 seconds, this damage is decreased by 10%. So that can be until he reaches 0. So basically, when you're on field, this damage will decrease, but I think after you leave combat for 3 seconds, which is going to be whenever you're rotating out to all of your other characters on the team in a rotation, I think this will be able to pop up, and then you can use this for the first initial instances. So you could basically cast this E and do the damage with the E real fast before this gets to 0. Or also cast as burst, I think, could be how this works. But that's only if no burning opponents are nearby for more than 6 seconds. So basically, as long as you're burning enemies on field, I think it'll be pretty good. But you have to leave for that 3 seconds, which I think is perfectly viable for most team rotations. So yeah, as for my final closing thoughts on Spinach, I think Spinach is actually going to be a pretty okay hyper carry type of character. So that'll be pretty fun. He definitely does look very cool. I am actually tempted on pulling for him, but I'm probably going to save for the Pyro Archon myself, just because I haven't been playing Genshin for like a long time, and I don't have many wishes. I only have like under 20 wishes, and I pulled like C1 Arlecchino and weapons, so I'm a bit poor at the moment. But yeah, he's definitely got the cool green dragon aesthetic, which I think is a pretty cool aesthetic to go with. So yeah, definitely very much looking forward to seeing more gameplay of him and playing him when he comes out. But thanks for subscribing, thanks for following me. I am actually trying to get back to 12,000 subscribers on my channel. It would really mean a lot if you would subscribe for more Genshin Impact related videos. But yeah, without any more delay, it's been me, Hokyoku. I will catch you all in the next video. Farewell.